Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Ariann Black's Magic Kitchen with your host, Anthony Darkstone.
Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, depending on where you are watching this in the world. If you're not watching it live, still a good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to you, because we tape this and then it goes out to a lot of people around the world. Now, why am I so worried about around the world? Well, two reasons. Firstly, the most important one is all the shows, Ariann Black's Magic Kitchen, is an SAM production, the Society of American Magicians. And why do we do this? A number of reasons. Some of them are basically just to have a little bit of fun in the kitchen. It's not a cooking show. It's not a magic show. It's a little bit of both. But the overall magic is there for us to just get together, hang out, and have some fun. And this is why the Society of American Magicians does that. I'm very, very happy to tell you that the reason it goes around the world is because we have an assembly called the SAM International Assembly. There are some of you watching who are members. Most certainly the Magic in the Kitchen, Ariann Black is a member. So is Scott Wells, who's doubling up as a cameraman today, and so is Trixie Bond. These three names I've mentioned, keep them in mind, because in the first weekend of September, they are all on the bill. They're the show kids and headliners at the fabulous Texas Association of Magicians convention. It is, like most things, virtual, but it's still going to be a lot of fun. If you've never ever attended one, try and attend this one virtually. I can assure you from personal empirical experience, they're just absolutely wonderful. For all of those of you who are watching outside of the US, you don't have to be an American citizen to join the Society of American Magicians. Just get in touch with me. I'm fairly easy to find, or just leave your contact details on the Society of American Magicians Facebook public page, and I'll get back to you. Also, if you have not joined Ariann Black's Magic Kitchen, the group page, just simply go there and ask to join. Ariann or myself will just approve you. That's as simple as that. I've just had a big message up, which I think everybody can see, from Cindy Bighorse, who was our guest last week, telling us that the registrations for TAOM are open from tomorrow. So there's a plug for TAOM. This time from Sugarland, the one and only Trixie Bond. So the Magic in the Kitchen, Miss Ariann Black and myself will both introduce you and welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen, Trixie Bond.
Hi, Ariann. Hi, Tony, and everybody, and my friend Jeannie. Thanks for tuning in. First of all, I want to tell you, I have several passions in life besides magic, and that is gardening, cooking, of flowers. My little talk today on the magic of cooking and garnishing with edible flowers. Now, you might think this is something new, and a lot of the chefs out in California are doing edible flowers, but this is absolutely nothing new. It's been going on for centuries. In fact, Confucius, known for his great wisdom, included chrysanthemums in his diet. And as early as 400 BC, the Persians ate nasturtiums in their diet. And those had qualities. Not only were they tasty, because nasturtiums kind of taste like pepper, they're actually quite spicy, but they also have an antibiotic quality to them as well. So I'm sure they had figured that out. You know, you, like many other cooks and everybody watching, probably already includes flowers in their diet without knowing, because, ta-da, broccoli, cauliflower, artichoke are all flowers that we consume regularly. But you may not think about including other flowers in your diet, such as, well, roses, it's quite popular, gladiolas, sunflowers, chrysanthemums, dianthus, nasturtiums, herbal blooms, they're all edible. So today, I kind of wanted to take you on a journey of how to use these in your kitchen repertoire. Now, you wouldn't use every single thing in one meal, just sprinkled and peppered in here or there to spice up the looks of a dish or the flavor as you would herbs. And that's an interesting point too, because when you're using flowers, you use them similar to what you would use an herb. no more than 2 or 3 in a dish, because then it becomes too complicated and you really don't enjoy the particular qualities of each flower. Now, not every flower is edible, and that's an important rule to remember, because there are flowers such as oleanders that are quite deadly. So you do need to kind of research or Google a flower before you start eating it. And another rule is never eat a flower from a nursery or florist, because those come from areas where they use pesticides. And many of us buy organic fruits and vegetables. Well, you want your flowers especially to be organic as well. So don't eat flowers from the roadside, because they have exhaust on them and could be a little poisonous. I'm going to take you on a little journey using these flowers from salads, appetizers, an entree, desserts, and even cocktails, which is all of our favorite parts, right? If you have allergies, do proceed with caution, because a lot of flowers have pollen, and many of us are allergic to pollen. And when you pick flowers, the best time to pick them out of the garden is first thing in the morning. Why? Because that's when they have the most moisture on them. And you want to bring them in, immerse them in a bowl of cool, cold water, swish them off in the water. Why? Because they have little critters that are inside, ants and spiders and all of those. And we'll face it, any kind of movement you want on your plate needs to come from a knife and a fork, and not something with 8 legs, right? All right. So, for example, not all of the carnation. This has been in a bowl of water, and I've pulled out the floral stems, and you'll see that we have the ends. Well, these ends are quite bitter, so you don't want to use those. Just to add a little extra color, you can use marigolds, carnations, gladiola petals, marigold. And you know that some flowers, such as this flower, can be substituted for expensive herbs. So I'm just going to snip these up and sprinkle them in the salad, and you'll see what a pretty color that adds to it. And some herbal blooms, and these are chive blooms, so I'm going to add those to my salad as well. So adds a nice little touch. You can also infuse flowers into things like vinegar. I started with a champagne, or you can use white wine, and some organic rose petals. I also have a little sprig of rosemary in the bottle as well. And you'll see it's colored, it was kind of a pale yellow to start off with. And now it's kind of a really pretty pink orange color. So I'm going to show you one of my favorite vinaigrettes to use for this salad, using the rose vinegar. I learned this when I was on a barge in France. It was fun. I mean, the chef cooked on a little stove that was this big, but she showed me how to make a beautiful vinaigrette. You start off with a couple of small cloves of garlic and a piece of shallot. And I'm going to do this in a food processor. But before I add the olive oil, I'm going to put this up pretty fine as I can get. We're going to add some nice olive oil, virgin, meaning the first pressing of the olive oil. So that looks about enough. And I use about 1/3, 2/3. So 2/3 olive oil, 1/3 vinegar, just about like that. A little salt, pinch of salt. That was with the champagne. The magic ingredient, Dijon mustard, and a handful of herbs. In this case, I'm going to keep it simple and use flat leaf parsley in here. So there we go. And you can watch the magic happen with this.
Well, it smells good already.
Almost looks like a green goddess dressing.
Almost. I mean, if you put like tarragon and parsley, you would have a green goddess. I forgot to mention that I also make salts. This is kosher salt with dried basil, and you grind that up in like a food mill, and boy, does it add a lovely flavor to dressings, to meats. So you see, this is a beautiful vinaigrette with loaded with tons of flavor from the rose vinegar and a little parsley. With your herbs, your flowers, you can infuse things. Also, infused olive oil too. But it's really simple to make at home. For example, if you use garlic, all you have to do is maybe just chop it up a little bit, put it in a glass container, add however much olive oil you want to use, say half a cup, and make sure that garlic is dry. Any ingredients that you use in vinegar or olive oil, key, really important part is to make sure they're dry. Why? Because if it has water on it, it could introduce bacteria to your vinegar or your olive oil. So just put it in a glass container and pop it in the microwave. Yeah, the microwave for about 10 seconds. And you will have magically infused that olive oil. All right, another appetizer idea are little potatoes stuffed with an herbal cream cheese and petals from flowers. You can use gladiolas, roses, calendula. That's a good one because it'll brighten it up, they're bright yellow. And you can mix it in with your cream cheese. Now, I've taken the little bit called big seed. Potatoes are grated, who knew? And I've boiled them, and with a knife kind of hollowed out a little bit, you just take off the top like this. And to make it pretty, I'm using a flat leaf parsley, and I'm going to pipe in a little of the cream cheese, just like this, and garnish a pretty carnation. Over here, I have society garlic. It's a beautiful plant. It looks kind of like a chive, but when it blooms, it has an edible purple flower. Those look lovely. So this is served cold, and it's easy to make, and it's pretty too, right? When you have folks over, sometimes you like to have some crudités. So I've done a crudité tray with green beans, assorted colored carrots, some pepper strips, blanched broccoli, and garnishing with parsley. Why not use flowers to garnish with? It just changes the appearance like that. Here's some more chives. Oh, I think I like that better. I also wanted to mention some herbs that flower. This was flat leaf Italian parsley. You'll see how it's bloomed, it bolted, and now I've got seeds forming from where the flower used to be. So I saved my seeds from year to year, and I have more parsley in the spring.
Harriet asked about how you blanch the broccoli.
Broccoli? Well, boiling water, and then I've had these already kind of chopped up, and you put them in the boiling water for just about 1 minute in an ice bath, water with ice, and it stops the cooking like that. And that's how you have a light green color. I also did the green beans that way too. I cooked those just a little bit longer because I don't like that mustiness taste of the. After you blanch any kind of vegetable that you want to be bright green, you put them in the boiling water for 1 minute, and then I had just a mixing bowl with ice and water. You immerse the vegetable in there, and what that does is stop the cooking. Because even if you after having a vegetable in boiling water, you take it out, it's still hot, it continues to cook. So by immersing it in a cold bath, it stops the cooking like that and retaining the beautiful color. It wasn't and beautiful colors from orange and yellows to purples and reds and burgundies. And you can use those in your salad, but use them just the color part, not the bottom part where it goes into the flour down here, because that is very bitter in a recipe. And
so we're saying just use the petals, basically, yeah?
Yeah, and cut them. Flowers taste like they smell.
Especially like if you're using roses. Roses that don't smell aren't going to change the flavor or the taste of your meal, whereas the roses that have that beautiful, rich bouquet of a scent will scent anything. I like to put them in water and put them on a table if I'm having guests over, because rose water is delicious, and you just put rose petals in, leave them in for 4 hours, and you've got scented flavored water.
And roses are wonderful to infuse. I'll be getting to a rose simple syrup I made for a champagne too in just a minute. But you're right, we have so many hybrid roses that have been crossbred that we've lost the scent. So
Yes.
the old-fashioned garden varieties are absolutely the best. This is another appetizer. This is just a small round of brie cheese. And I have used flat leaf parsley, some society garlic. I've garnished with some gladiola leaves, and this has a glaze on it. The glaze is made from unflavored gelatin and 2 cups of white wine. And if you don't drink, you can use chicken broth, as long as it's clear, to do this gelatin glaze. And I love ginger snaps with it. Now we move to candied rose petals. I have candied nice rose petals, the miniature roses, some mint leaves, and some pansies. Now, obviously, I did those earlier in the spring when I still had pansies. And the way you candy a rose petal, you clean it, make sure it's perfectly dry, a little egg white. I mix a couple of drops of vodka in with the egg white, and then you dust over super fine sugar. It's got to be the kind that says super fine, and you shift it over. And then I keep them stored this way in a tin with wax paper in between the layers. So they keep for several months. And you can use these to garnish cakes, or how about a plain piece of cheesecake? Look, with candied petals.
Wow, that looks delicious.
And
wow.
it tastes good too.
Oh,
I like the dried candied petals with the cheesecake too.
I was out in my garden earlier and I picked some of my roses to make the rose water.
Yes.
But I am drying the leaves. And so I'm going to, right now I'm using the oven for other things, but I will put these in the oven for like 8 hours and let them dry out at like, you know, the 170 degrees, just so people can see. You can see it still has water on it from when I rinsed it off. And you're just going to pick and see how that leaf comes right off. And I like to put them so that they're not touching. But like we said, you want the roses that smell the strongest. And these smell amazing. So these are my rose buds.
Rose hips.
Yep.
Those are rose hips. Extremely high in vitamins, and they use those in teas as well.
So you only get these rose hips when the flower has lost its leaves. You don't get it prior to that. You can do all sorts of things with these rose hips, and the amount you get more vitamin C from this little thing than you do an orange.
Talking about dried flowers, well, we're going to talk about lavender now for these lavender cookies. And there's so much you can do with lavender, but it's very, very strong, so you need to use just a little bit. Lavender is one of the key ingredients in herbes de Provence. Herbes de Provence on a baked chicken and one of those preserved lemons that makes a beautiful dish.
It's one of the most versatile mixes of spices, and I use it all the time with everything.
So today I made some lavender lemon cookies. And lavender,
I'll try that out.
it goes really nice
That's
with
good.
the citrus flavor. That's why I've used some lemon peel in this cookie dough. It's a basic shortcake, shortbread recipe that you would do, and it's butter, flour, lavender. Now
It's really good.
I did not put the whole chunk of lavender in there. What I did was some coarse sugar. I ground it to a fine, fine powder, because you don't want to bite into that chunky piece of lavender. And also, when you're purchasing dried herbs, flowers, it's especially lavender. You know, they use lavender for many things, like potpourri. You have to buy the culinary grade of lavender.
Most of my culinary lavender from Hawaii.
I made a butter, just combined butter with chopped rose petals.
Just hold up your book, if you be kind enough, if it's nearby, because that actually tells us about everything and then some, right?
Yes, it does. It's a little booklet. It's got, let me put it up here, it's got pretty pictures and different recipes that I've used, entrees, cocktails. That's my favorite part.
We're coming
goodness.
shortly.
Good. Okay,
Yeah.
so I wanted to talk to you
Wait,
about.
before we leave the lavender, let me quickly talk about lavender potatoes. So
Okay.
lavender, you can actually sprinkle over steaks or vegetables. It's a really versatile flower. Here is the flower right before it blooms. Here is the flower blooming. With the potatoes, you're going to chop them up into just little pieces. You're going to sprinkle a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, and then you're going to take the ground. Now, lavender is a very, very strong flower. You do not need a lot of it. You're going to sprinkle that all over the potatoes. You're going to add a little bit of olive oil. You take it up so that you get the salt, pepper, and the lavender all over your potatoes. You're going to put it on a tray, and then you're going to pull it out of the oven, and you can see that you now have lavender potatoes.
2 questions for you, Trixie,
Beautiful.
please, on behalf of some of the folks. One was, I guess, a pretty obvious one. Where and how do people get your book?
Oh, just email me. They're $25 mailed. Trixie@trixiebond.com.
What stage are you picking the lavender in order to dry it out?
I pick it when it's blooming. When do you pick yours?
I pick it at 2 stages. So I pick it when it's about to bloom, and I dry it to use in cooking. And that's when you buy the cooking grade, that's what it is they've taken it right before it blooms and they dry it out. But once it's gotten to this point where it's pretty already dead and dried out, it's not going to be as good. It still has a scent, and I can still crush it and use it in things like potpourris and stuff, and it'll still smell.
Can I just add in one thing there, which Trixie may or may not agree with? Like a lot of the Spanish and Portuguese and Italian lavender, you're right, it's about the acidity in the soil. I tend to go there quite early in the morning, like you said, just after sunup. The way I was taught by my grandmas is you smell them. The smell kind of says, oh yeah, that's the smell or the flavor I want. Would you agree with that, Trixie and Ariann?
Yes.
Yes.
Right
Yeah.
on, Tony. So we're going to go back to nasturtiums. Everything but the roots on this plant are edible. And nasturtiums are very peppery. My favorite way to do this is to take the bloom, stuff it with a little bit of guacamole, put it on a jicama, slice of jicama that looks like a tostita. I cut it out, and it is really, really tasty because you get that water nut crunch of the jicama and the guacamole and that peppery spice of the nasturtium. The other second favorite plant, flower, is the scented geranium. Now, it's not the typical geranium you think of in your home garden. It's a scented geranium. Yes, citronella, which wards off supposedly mosquitoes and bugs that you have on your patio, is a member of the scented geranium. But there are probably a dozen different kinds: rose, lemon, coconut, apple, and they all smell just like that. Their leaves are similar to the citronella. Now, this is a scented geranium, rose scented geranium pound cake that I made. And what I did was I took the leaves from the scented geranium. So I took the dried leaves and used butter as glue on a bundt cake. Butter, flour, sugar. I used rose water just to give it just a little bit, and with some club soda. You can use 7-Up as well. But the rose water really scents and perfumes. So this is how it came out. I'll show you what I do with the scented geranium leaves. I'll use it as a pattern all the way around.
What is it you're sprinkling on there, Trixie?
Powdered
What-
sugar.
This is the pound cake. I'm going to cut it open, and Scott can tell you how it smells.
Yeah, give it a try here.
Using flowers as containers. So gladiolas, hibiscus are flowers that you can use, and tulip. When you're using a glad or a hibiscus, we want to remove the stamen from inside as a container. Here's the hibiscus. Problem with hibiscus is they bloom for only one day, and it's usually the day before you need them. So there's a little trick to this. If you have a hibiscus plant that's in beautiful bloom and you want it for a party, you can pick it that day and roll it in a paper towel, and it comes out really pretty. I've used a hibiscus. I've painted some chocolate on the inside of dark chocolate. Just melted some chips and with a little cream. And now what I'm going to do is pipe in chocolate mousse to make a beautiful dessert. So just remember to remove the stamen from the flower before you use it. The only stamen that we eat is saffron, and that's the stamen from a crocus flower. Keep that in mind. All right, an edible centerpiece. What I have is a bed of lettuce, some passion flowers for decoration, which are edible, but if you pick them, just like your squash blossoms, you will miss that beautiful passion fruit that forms after the flower. But I'm using gladiolas as a container. What I'm going to do is scoop in a little chicken salad right in the middle of the gladiola. Voila, you have edible centerpiece. Okay, now what I've been waiting to tell you about are some of the cocktails. Simple syrup, it's a cup of water, a cup of sugar, and you boil it down. But you can also infuse it with, say, a cup of rose petals. So I need about half a cup of rose syrup. And you'll see how the color has leached out of those red roses. I'm pouring it over a block of ice, and I'm using a very inexpensive bottle of champagne, basically making a little champagne punch. And I've done a simple floral ring on an oasis bed to make the punch bowl ring, and just set a punch bowl in there. Doesn't take too many flower arranging skills to do that. And I'm using a saucer or a coupe glass. You can also use the rose simple syrup. Royal Kier is champagne with chambord, a raspberry liqueur. So I'm just going to make my own rose cocktail by pouring just straight champagne into that liqueur and garnish with a couple of rose petals. Now you can also find the rose liqueur already made, and it's lavender with wild rose infused. I get to talk about vanilla because the vanilla bean is the product of an orchid. When orchids bloom, they have 3 hours to pollinate these orchids. That's how vanilla beans were from an orchid. But I learned a real interesting tip at the farm, and you'll never ever run out of vanilla extract again. All you need is a bottle. You could use an empty liquor bottle, wine bottle. I've got one over there. And you use vodka. Put like 3 beans in that bottle, fill it up with vodka, put your vodka in a dark place for 18 months, and you've got vanilla extract. And you can keep refilling that with vodka, and you never run out.
I'm going to talk to you about some of the leaves. And I use hibiscus. I will put it into my little spice grinder, and I use it in all sorts of things. These here are rosebuds. And I use rosebuds, not just the petals, but the rosebuds in my cooking all the time. One of the things that rosebuds are really good in is teas. So one of the other dried things that I have here, this flower is jasmine. Now, if you get the wrong kind of jasmine, it's poisonous. This happens to be culinary grade jasmine. I use it in my teas. I use it in cooking. It's actually good with fish, and it will flavor the fish for me.
This cocktail is beautiful. And I'm starting off with a highball glass, and I'm going to pour 1.5 ounces of the violet, creme de violet. Then another flower is elderflower liqueur. You might know it as Saint Germain, but it is an elderflower liqueur is going in there, and top it off with the champagne. Look what happens when you stir. It looks like a stormy morning happening. You can cut into the violet. I've had it growing for 3 years in the shade, and it grows into the grass. It's quite invasive. That is delicious. This next cocktail is partly for you because it uses a liqueur called Liqueur 43. Ariann and I were talking recently about the root beer plant, which I have right over here. It's also known as Bota Santa, meaning sacred leaf. I mean, you cut this plant down, it smells like root beer. And this is the fruit, this long, skinny white thing. When I break it open, it has a scent of root beer. You chew on it, it tastes a little like root beer. It has an ingredient called saffron in it. It's huge. It's about 7 feet tall. What I've done is made a simple syrup using the leaves. Again, 1 cup of sugar, 1 cup of water, and about 2 cups of chopped up leaves. And I'll just let that steam. I've already put it in my cocktail shaker. It is lime juice. It has the simple syrup from the Bota Santa plant. It has 1/2 ounce of the Liqueur 43 and some rum, some dark rum. And this does not have any ice or any in it now. So I must shake this for about 15 seconds or so. All right, and now I'm going to add the ice. I'm going to add a little ice. Here we go. And this is called a vanilla root beer, a little root beer, and garnish with the leaf. And there we have a vanilla root beer sour made from the root beer plant. And now I'm going to show you very, very simple. What I'm using is chartreuse. It's 130 different herbs and flowers. The main ingredient of chartreuse is dianthus. So that is the liqueur, ice, and a little club soda. You can also use tonic water too. It's a simple cocktail with a rosemary stirring stick. Now we're back to roses. Pre-mixed this rose martini, and this has vodka. And I put in a tea bag, a rose hip tea bag. Change the whole color and the flavor of this vodka. I'm going to make a martini. This has vodka, white cream de cocoa, a little rose water. I'm going to mix that up. And I'm going to garnish with a fresh rosebud, maybe a couple of petals. Ta-da! Tasty rose martini. The next drink I'm going to show you is chamomile infused vodka. And I've used the chamomile flowers and just simply put it in vodka for a couple of days. So this has vodka, honey, lemon juice, and now I'm going to add a little ice to it and garnish with a lemon wedge. And there's a quick cocktail using chamomile. Many people use that as a tea to go to sleep with. Stepping into hibiscus. So for this cocktail, the margarita, the hibiscus margarita, I made a tea from the dried hibiscus. I also infused tequila. So this has lime juice, the tea, the tequila, a little agave, and some lime juice. And I'm going to pour it in to a nice little glass. We're going to have margarita on the rocks. Next one is a hibiscus martini. So this one has vodka. I infuse vodka with hibiscus flower. And this has fresh lime juice. It also has like a Grand Marnier, an orange liqueur in it. And I'm going to add a little ice. So again, I made a simple syrup using the hibiscus flower. And we have a Hibiscus Martini. So that's the flower. I'm just going to float that. There you go. Next cocktail is called a Unicorn Spritz. It's probably the most magical one of it all. It's made with the butterfly pea vine plant. The botanical name is Clitorius. Now, but they are available to buy dried. So it is a beautiful blue. I've made a tea. I also made a simple syrup for this. It has the butterfly pea vine. It has gin and simple syrup and the tea. So I've mixed up the gin, the simple syrup, and the tea, and I'm pouring it into a highball glass that has ice, blue ice, because what I did was freeze some of the tea into ice cubes. I made ice cubes with it. So, and I've sugar coated the rim of this with a purple sugar. And you're going to see why I chose purple in a minute. So here's this beautiful drink. Watch the magic. I'm going to pour a secret ingredient into it, and the blue turns purple. For my last cocktail, back to my favorite one, lavender. Well, I put lavender inside of the vodka bottle. So this lavender martini, we're going to use 4 ounces. So that's about 4 ounces there. Lemon juice, the lavender simple syrup, okay? I'm gonna pour that into my cocktail shaker. I'm gonna add a couple of dashes of lavender bitters and 1, 2, ice. Can you see the beautiful color? And now we're gonna shake it. And voila, a lavender martini. Well, so I hope you've enjoyed my walkthrough and given you a couple of ideas of what you can do with edible flowers. And Tony, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming and joining us.
Wonderful pleasure. Could we just maybe watch that? And I promise you that those who have not seen it before, it's quite a treat to hear Mr. Bongo sing.
If you're feeling in the dumps, like a camel with 3 humps, here's a perfect medication to relieve the situation. Just a little touch of magic helps to make the day seem bright. Just a tiny hint of hocus pocus makes the darkness light. A little prestidigitation puts a smile on every face. If you dabble in deception, extrasensory perception, it'll make the world a magic place. Hey presto! If you're feeling out of sorts, full of melancholy thoughts, put your dreams and plans in motion with a Kabbalistic potion. Just a little touch of magic helps to make the day seem bright. Just a tiny hint of hocus pocus makes the darkness light. A little prestidigitation puts a smile on every face. If you dabble in deception, extrasensory perception, it'll make the world a magic place. Just a little touch of magic helps to make the day seem bright. Just a tiny hint of hocus pocus makes the darkness light. A little prestidigitation puts a smile on every face. If you dabble in deception, extrasensory perception, it'll make the world a magic place. If you dabble in deception, extrasensory perception, it'll make the world a magic place.
Blessings to his memory. Respect R.I.P.
These are the pictures stained glass was taken. You saw that video that they had those. That's the original artwork. Yeah. Tell me who it was again.
Dean Carnegie.
Dean Carnegie of Keller and Dante, and then there was one of him then as well, which she made into the stained glass
I'm sure there's a lot of things you want to ask Trixie. What did you have in the pre-prepared salad?
Radicchio and carrots.
Okay.
It's romaine, radicchio, and shredded carrots. That's just very, very simple.
So we didn't talk about one of the most edible flowers that grows everywhere. And most people look at it as a weed, and that's dandelions. And
That's right.
A lot of people stick dandelion leaves into their salads. It's a little bit bitter, and so they like to mix it up with other leaves. But the head, the flower is edible. The stem, the leaves, everything with a dandelion is edible.
That's right. And you can put that out of your backyard as long as you don't have weed and feed on it.
Yeah.
Right. You could make wine out of that. My grandma used to make dandelion wine, I remember.
No kidding.
You jog my memory. Oh, no, really seriously. And apparently you can. I don't know if it's commercially available, but I know, back in whenever, in the old days, they used to make dandelion wine, like elderberries. Yeah, elderberry wines. I mean, that elderberry juice. I mean, you used some today, didn't you, Trixie? You had some elderflowers.
Yeah, elderflower.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so dandelions, you can make a dandelion honey. And it's an amber, a really light amber yellowy liquid that tastes similar to honey. And I will post a recipe for how to make it because it takes like 2 days to make. You take the heads of the dandelions and you let them soak for 2 days, and then you sift it and drain it, and it's the most wonderful, delicious thing you'll ever taste.
Speaking of recipes, could you pick a few things today, like a couple of the cocktails and maybe a couple of the other things that you spoke about, and just email it to me? I'll post them up. Of course, if they want more, they get in touch with you, and you have the book. It's just $25. Postage paid in the U.S. If you're outside the U.S., obviously check with Trixie how much the postage is going to be.
There's the cover of it right there. It's a spiral-bound book.
I mean, I started out by talking about that, and I will mention it again. TAOM, the first weekend in September.
September the 5th. That's when it's going to be.
Oh, okay.
And by the way, this is one other thing that Trixie had made that is marinating that will be ready, and we'll be drinking this on Labor Day during the TAOM. Trixie, you want to talk about this?
Yes, this is pineapple infused vodka. It's just really good pineapple sliced, and I poured probably 2/5 of vodka over it. It has to sit for about 10 days to 2 weeks, and then you just drain off the vodka and you throw away the pineapple. The pineapple infuses into the vodka. The way you make the martini, you just drain it into a cocktail shaker with ice, shake till it gets those little shards. That's it. It is delicious. Anyway,
Yeah.
I enjoy cooking. I love gardening and magic. So, I mean,
She loves cooking, which is why this show came up. We have one coming up next Friday, the 28th, and that one is Ariann in her kitchen.
Oh, so this is a nice warm country from the east, a little bit Asian, and it is delicious.
I think we'll get to the stage of saying thank you.
Okay.
Any more?
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you so much, Trixie and Scott. Thank you to most illustrious. I will just leave you with another message. If you have friends or people who would like to become members of the SAM and the International Assembly, please contact me. We want to make this camaraderie of the SAM grow and spread it literally all over the world. How do you do that? Either get in touch with me or go to the website magicsam.com. Just there where you got all those little gray buttons, it says International Assembly. Press that button. It's all there. It's very straightforward. It's very simple. Click on it. Thank you very, very much to everyone for attending.
Thanks so much for coming. And Trixie, thank you so much. It was so informative. We loved having you on the show. Thank you, Scott, for being the cameraman and our taste tester. Thanks again, Tony and Joel and everybody else that's involved with the show. We'll see you again next week.